should be good to go.
All right, welcome to episode 3. We have all the stars have aligned, and we have all 4 podcasters here in the building.
Yay! All 4 of us.
A little bit of excitement in the room today. Anything interesting happen in the past week for anyone?
Who wants to take the reins on this?
Yeah.
You mean on personal level or
professional, whatever's kind of hit you. Hopefully not physically.
Well, I guess on the personal level, I've been trying to get knee surgery for the last year and a half at least. I tore my ACL at Sky Zone.
I never knew it was from Sky Zone.
Yeah, it was originally from Sky Zone. I don't normally tell people that because it's kind of embarrassing because it's a combination of things that kind of put it over the edge. But Sky Zone was like the final blow to it, like a 270-pound man jumping on a trampoline trying to go as high as I can go, and I landed in the middle of 2 of them. And my knee popped out twice because I hit the trampoline, and then I bounced back up. My knee was already out, and then I fell back on it a second time. So just confirming the damage was done. I wasn't able to walk for about 3 weeks after that. So saw a doctor. Doctor said, "Oh, it's just a loose patella. You should be fine." And I didn't. I was like, "Okay, fine." It's gone out about 8 times since. And I got eventually my boss, Good Life, he made me go to the Pan Am clinic to get a second opinion. And they're like, "Yeah, your patella is really loose. It might be a torn MCL. We're going to get an MRI to check it out." Took 6 months to go get the MRI, 2 months to get the results. Came back, they're like, "Yeah, actually, it's your torn meniscus, torn ACL." And so we booked the date with a surgeon. I met with them on last Tuesday. And May 31st is my surgery, so I'll go for surgery. I'll be off for about 2 months from work. And then it'll be a lengthy recovery, but I'm just excited to finally get it done.
Yeah, kind of get back to some sense of normalcy, especially if it's been popping out that often.
Well, and I love to play sports. I love to play basketball, football, and I can't really do those things right now. I played dodgeball, but even then, I'm very careful on it for the most part. And usually, it's gone out a couple times, even playing dodgeball, just as like my body is like reminding me that like, no, you can't do this.
My issue with dodgeball is always stretching enough before and then thinking I'm too athletic during the game. So I'll take a jump and try and jump over like as high as I can. And all of a sudden I feel a twinge in my hamstring or something. But no major dodgeball injuries or at Sky Zone for me.
Yeah.
Just a lot of slam dunks at Sky Zone.
Yeah, I love dodgeball at Sky Zone. And then the slam dunk was cool too. Actually, I hurt myself doing that as well. I'm a big guy.
A little bit injury prone.
Well, on a trampoline, you wouldn't think I get that much height, but like 270 pounds of force, like coming down on a trampoline, I tend to get quite a bit of height, and so I misjudged it, and like my neck kind of went into the rim because I didn't realize it was going to go that high.
All right, we got to keep Jayse away from Sky Zone is what we learned. See, I knew this would lead.
I have to at least injure myself once a year. I think it's a contract.
I went on a pretty big string of whenever my family went to a different place, whenever we were on vacation, I would end up getting hurt. So there was one time, it was after watching Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, when I was about 12 years old, and we were in the mountains. I think we were in Fernie, BC, doing a snowboard ski trip, and I decided to play fight with my brother, and I rolled into the corner of the wall and just had like blood spewing everywhere and had to go to the hospital for a couple stitches. But there were a couple other times like that too. So I think I got all my injuries out when I was a kid, so now hopefully, I made it through the football career without any major MCL, ACL, or knee injuries. So
yeah, that's amazing because it's such a common thing to happen, especially in the football world.
Well, on running backs, when you have everybody trying to run after you and tackle you low and flip you over or take you out. So kind of happy with that. My shoulder's a little bit... I always wondered why my dad, when I was young, wasn't able to play catch for more than about 15 minutes without having to go back inside. And I now understand it because throwing a ball, I can make it. I can still play a touch football game at quarterback and do it, but it's a little bit. I can feel kind of, I don't know, not. It's just gets sore pretty easily and pretty often. So I think one day I'll probably need some surgery or something.
Well, yeah, especially if you're playing things like dodgeball too. That repetitive movement, right, in the shoulder, the buildup of cartilage.
when we decide to play 2-hour games, it's probably the worst thing I could do for my shoulder is throw a ball as hard as humanly possible.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean,
100 or 200 times.
We originally know each other through dodgeball, right?
Yeah.
So it's yeah. Honestly, I never really played dodgeball on that level before. So I remember the first time, I think 2 weeks, my arm was so sore, like I could barely move my shoulder, and I thought like I injured it. But it's just over time, I got better and better. But
yeah, you condition things, right? You kind of, and you figure out, I know now I'll put spin on the ball because it's a different trajectory. It's not just throwing straight at something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's always ways to work around kind of the things that are in the way or some soreness or
Absolutely.
whatever. But yeah, it's finding the way. Any dodgeball stories or getting hurt at Sky Zone stories from the rest?
No.
No? All right. We'll go from there. So I did want to talk a little bit about, actually, kind of a cool thing that I did. I went to the MABA competition yesterday. So that's the Amateur Bodybuilding Association, and this was to become eligible for, what is it, provincials? So this was a regional competition. I found it interesting. It was nice to see people. I think I can always respect people that try and take something basically to their physical limit. So I understand that through sport is just, you want to get to the peak of your game, whatever that is. So in football, it's a full off season of training and lifting heavy weights and doing sprint training. And, you know, you almost have to be a bodybuilder, but then have that cardio side and be able to strap on pads and go hit somebody, you know, every single play of the game.
Yeah.
So I definitely know the mindset of that. But it's interesting to have something that's completely based on, I wouldn't even say completely based on aesthetics after yesterday. It seems that you have a lot of people with huge amounts of support just from their peer group and their family and their friends. And you also have people with the posing that you could tell the people that really enjoyed what they were doing, kind of that time on stage. They perfected their routine of different poses. And it was really inspiring. Some of them, you just gravitated towards them because it seemed that they were in their element, and you could kind of tell that. But then you have the other side of things where you could tell for some people it's kind of, it just might not stem from the most healthy place. It might be they're uncomfortable with something, the way they look, and they just want to get bigger and bigger. And you kind of see that within bodybuilding is sometimes trying to fill a void.
Yeah, I think it becomes an obsession, right? Sometimes not always for the healthier, although I would argue that to be good at something, you definitely have to be obsessed in some way or another.
Well, we talked about this last time a little bit about specialization and or, you know, having that plan A. And I can respect that because you only accomplish great things if you're in tune with what you want to accomplish, right? If you go, I'm going to be the world's best bodybuilder, well, you're going to have to take the steps to do that. And just like anything, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you're going to have to spend the time learning about, well, you're going to have to come up with an idea, you're going to have to pursue it, you're going to have to learn all the different aspects of it. And even to translate this into maybe what through the podcasting thing, it's like learning all these little intricacies and learning even skills that, you know, previously undetermined, like, or just things that I hadn't worked on in the past. And now it's translating that into, okay, find a way to make this work. And what are the small steps we can take towards being better, you know, personally and as a group as well.
Absolutely. I mean, with anything, you have to be obsessed to some level, but there's also, we talked about this, there is such thing as too far, right?
Yeah.
As too much. And you're breaking limits has its consequences. But yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about was volunteering. If anybody has done some volunteering in the past, what sort of volunteering did they do? And did they feel they made a difference within the community or wherever they were doing it?
Colin or Ben?
My volunteering's, up to this point, it's mainly been dealing with shelter animals. That's one of the passions of mine. I love helping animals. You know, it really gives me that good feeling that, you know, but I have also been looking to do, I know Riley and I were actually talking about this a bit. We were talking about doing the March for Mental Health, volunteering there, and you were also mentioning another one. I don't really remember the.
Yeah, so I was gonna save this a little bit, but we're in talks to help out with the Andrew Dunn Walk, which is a walk for mental health, and it will be in, I believe it's May, early May, and we're gonna reach out and look for some volunteers for that. So it'll be one of the things that we want to accomplish with being the changes, actually being out there in the community, helping people, and volunteering our time to really make an effect on our community, make a positive effect. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out. There is an email attached to definitely our Instagram, probably our Facebook as well.
Yeah.
We said it at the end of last episode. Maybe one more time, b.the.change.yps@gmail.com. Lots of dots in there.
Simple.
Period, stop. We got to figure
Straight
out
to
a better
the
way.
point.
Straight to the point. Nice dad joke, Jayse.
Yeah, I'm good at those.
So that's something we're hoping to do. But with the animals, what drives you to do that? Like, what's
I grew up on a farm. I've always been around animals. I've always loved helping animals, and
it's interesting because you think of farming, you don't necessarily think of that animal care, like loving animals, but you definitely do have those relationships in a different way than, I think, especially if you grow up in the city, you have the relationship with food, especially proteins and meat, where you just arrive at, whatever the local shop is and say, I want my steak and my chicken and whatever it is. And so you don't even see the animal. There's no natural element to that. It's just, okay, I need food, I'm going to go buy it. So you must have an interesting relationship with animals through that.
yeah.
Any notes or anything? Like, I'm trying to think of, maybe, is there a story in particular that led you to wanting to volunteer with animals?
Well, no, just other than I've been around them my whole life, and like I would like to make it a career at some point, and I kind of feel that volunteering at like a shelter is kind of that first step to getting in the door. When
Go ahead.
to like working at a vet office or getting into veterinarian medicine or something like that would definitely be what I'm aiming at, and I believe that that's a stepping stone in that direction.
I always respect people who have that love for animals and that passion for helping. I kind of know within my own life that people are people are who I want to help change and help make that difference with. But I always respect the environmentalists and even people that have that passion for helping animals, because you need all sorts of people in the world, and you need people that want to help make those changes. And that's a great way of doing it. I know in my own life I've had great pets, and it's kind of that unconditional love that it just helps you be satisfied. And knowing something, you have an animal that relies on you for sustenance, but also you have that mutual love and care of each other. I can't wait to get a cat, because I know I don't necessarily have the time to spend training and keeping up with a dog, but I just find I've lived with cats before, and dogs actually, but it's just that, it's not a ton of upkeep, but they're there, and that you have that love to go home to. It's always nice to have some, a pet greet you at the door and just be able to share in that experience. So I'm excited for that stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if I could do the whole, I admire that you can work with animals. I feel like I get too attached, especially if it were dogs. I love dogs. And I don't have one, but if I had the time and I was at home enough, I definitely would get one. But working with animals, that's incredible. I've never worked with animals in that way. However, I did do a lot of volunteer work with ALS at a younger age. I talked about this a little bit in the last podcast. My dad passed away from ALS, and we were talking about Stephen Hawking there because he also had ALS. So my sister and I we started out when we first found out he had ALS. We would stand by the roadside and hold up signs just saying donate for ALS. Eventually got the traction from news, like local media.
And the Ice Bucket Challenge.
And the Ice Bucket Challenge, yeah. Well, that came a lot later. This was back in 1997, 96. So would have been around 8 years old at the time. And yeah, local news got traction of it, and it kind of blew up from there. And then the ALS Society got wind of it and asked us to help out with the events and that. And then the ALS Walk came out of it, and we helped out with like the first time of that. And there was the ALS garage sale, and we went from taking dimes and nickels and quarters on the roadside to full-scale charity events and local hero awards. We were nominated about, I think, twice. We won a couple of them. The Premier Award, I believe we won once. And then we won the McDonald's Millennium Award, which sent 2,000 kids from around the world to Disney World for a week. So we won a trip to Disney World in the year 2000, which was pretty incredible. And we got like VIP access to everything. We had like our own guide that showed us around Disney World, and basically like backdoor access everywhere to Disney World. So it was a pretty incredible time. And in the end, we ended up, by the time my sister and I finished, just because we got busy with school and life, eventually it dissipated. But the ALS walk is still going. And actually, I think June 15th or June 18th, I can't remember, is the walk this year. So hopefully we can do something around that too. I know it'll be a little more difficult for me because I'll be just coming out of surgery. But if I can help out in any way, I know I will. But yeah, by the end, when my sister and I stopped volunteering, we kind of looked back at how much we raised over the years, and it was, I want to say, somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 for ALS. And looking back on that, it's pretty incredible, and it was a good feeling that we were doing something to help, and that all went towards research for ALS as well. So it was a good feeling, and to know that we came from basically standing on the roadside for weeks on end, and at the end of it, we got like $20 or $30 out of it, to being able to win these awards and get these huge donations from like Royal Bank for $5,000, and eventually just the accumulation of being able to raise that much money and that much awareness for ALS it was a good feeling.
Yeah, and I find it's always finding the cause that speaks to you and helping out as much as you can. I know it's that same thing where there's so many worthy causes where it's actually difficult to figure out where should I put my time and who needs the help. But the real answer is there's all sorts of people that need help. So find the thing that speaks to you and find a way to give back.
That's super important. Like some people just love volunteering for volunteering, and that's fantastic. But if it's something personal to you, like ALS, or whether it's animals, then it's you get more fulfillment out of it, I think. So I think there's that part of it that just resonates with you, and you get that feel good feeling. And it's not, I don't know, it's not a guilty pleasure, right? It's like you're helping someone through it, or helping an animal. And
hopefully the future, in the case of ALS, hopefully we can find a cure and find what causes it, and find prevention and or treatments that help. And you see how far we've come in cancer treatments. You see how far we've come in AIDS research.
Yeah.
And it's, and even you look at the past, there were plagues, there were things that took out whole millions of people and very quickly. And some of the advancements within medicine and research, even within the past 100 years, 50 years, it seems that we're really zoning in on living healthy lives and helping people live to their fullest for longer as well. So I don't know if there's ever been a better time medically to be alive. And and you even think it was even back in the 1600s, so pre-industrial revolution, that the infant mortality rates were 33%. So one out of 3 infants born into the world would not make it to adulthood, or I think even past the early stages of life. So
it's a good time to be alive.
Yeah. No, it definitely is.
It definitely is. Yeah. You look back on almost any point in history and compared to now, and it's just amazing how far we've come. Back in probably the 1600s, you were lucky to live to 30, 40 years old.
Yeah.
It was considered a privilege, right? Whereas now it's expected, right? What's life expectancy now? In the high 70s?
I believe it's even into the 80s.
Is it 80s now?
80,
so it's even higher than it's ever been in history. That's
if you're Korean or Japanese and you are a woman, it's about 90.
wow.
So
That's insane. That's incredible.
And they even have expectations that within the next 70 years we might be able to cure death, which is a scary thought in itself, but it's cause to be optimistic that at least we're moving towards healthier for longer. You even look at end of life health where you have physical ailments or you might have Alzheimer's. That's kind of been something prevalent in my family. And it's tough because you want people to live healthy and full lives. And it's that, you want it to be the person that and it's tough when you start to see people lose that at the end of life. So that's kind of becoming a new area of research. When people aren't living till 80, you don't necessarily have some of these issues, but at the same time, it's living for longer. And so it's uncharted territory, and it's finding the answers and some of the solutions for those diseases in old age as well. Maybe on a little bit of a different note, in my own life, I played football through high school, then even into junior and university. Now I help as much as I can. I actually just finished off helping a program coaching. I've coached teams in the past, but I find it's a little bit difficult to be there for a full season. I have done it in the past. I did it as part of my field work going through school. I helped manage a program, the program I played at high school football with, and so planned a lot of events, helped with some of the paperwork, and coached running backs with the team as well. So kind of flash forward, I still help with a lot of the football programming. There was just a high school development camp run by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at the U of W, and it's a lot of high school players, mostly in inner city programming, but free to anybody within either high school or the community league to come and work on their skills. And it was Saturday nights and Tuesday nights as well. And so helped out with that, but it's great to coach people who want to be coached. They're there in the off season wanting to get better, and just realizing that you can have an effect on people's lives through sport is really a cool thing. And I would work them hard and make sure they're running and exhausted after every drill, but it's, when they still keep coming back week after week, and the ones that want to get better are there, it's really rewarding to just be on the other side of my playing career, but now give back to the next generation of football players, because I know in my life it's been something that really pushed me to it pushed me to work hard, want to be better, learn that cooperation skill. Like, we all know the benefits that sports have, and so it's nice to just kind of experience it through the next generation as well. They're going through the hard work and wanting to get better in the off seasons of training and these high school development camps, and then they go into the season and they can be that much better and strive to be successful within sport, whatever that means to them. So that's been one of the volunteering outputs that I've done.
At what point in your life did you decide that kind of taking the knowledge and experience you have and transferring it to and being able to help others with that, like what point in your life did that happen? Like what caused that to happen?
It's funny. I think it's always been something that I wanted to accomplish, is help others. But I think one of the issues that I always struggled with, until maybe even, it's still something I struggle with, but that self-doubt, I think, creeps in, where you go, I don't know if I can help. I don't know if I have the proper knowledge. I don't know. And until you start doing something, and even with the discussion group, the Be the Change discussion group that we do, I had no clue what to expect until actually doing it. But now it's been such a rewarding experience. It's nice to just continue on with that. So I'll say that, especially within sport, I wanted to pursue, I didn't have goals necessarily saying, I want to be in the CFL or the NFL and have a 10-year career and make it to the Hall of Fame. And part of that I felt was me being realistic, and maybe I should have had more unrealistic goals, and I could have made it. Looking at it now, I kind of go, I'm happy that I had the mentality that I did, and I want to pursue sport to the best of my abilities. So I wanted to make it to my best, whatever that meant. And so that meant, and pursuing it as far as I could. Mm-hmm. And that was my goal, kind of intrinsically. I wasn't good at writing down goals when I was younger either, but and it pushed me. So grade 11 was actually one of the big transitions. I think I've told this story a little bit, but I always felt a little bit behind the other people around me. I was a little bit shorter, a little bit slower, a little bit more out of shape. And so grade 11, I was on the cusp. I played a lot of special teams and even played some fullback. So I was on the field, but I just didn't feel I was making a big enough difference. And then that whole off season, I worked with trainers through a local gym. And it was this big transition to, I got into crazy good shape, cardiovascular strength, everything, and came back the next year and played offense, defense, special teams, and we ended up winning a championship at the end of the year. So wow. It really paid off. So then flash forward, I played junior, I got injured a couple of years, I was a walk-on with the Bisons and ended up making the team. And funny enough, the 3 guys that were ahead of me in that position are now in the CFL. So it's interesting to watch those guys play. And I'm really proud because I knew they were good, but at that point do you know that they're that good? Are they all CFL players? And to see them all succeeding now.
Is there on some level, do you regret it or not continuing to pursue that?
So here's what I'll say. So I played the 2 years of Bisons. The second year I went in and I felt so close. I felt all I needed was an opportunity and it didn't come. And actually I went into the preseason game and the starter at that time got hurt. And so there were 2 guys in front of me and I had the 4th quarter to go into that game because we all split quarters. And typically your starters go in the first quarter and then you trickle down and then you have some of the backups go on later in the game. And actually, we only had maybe 2 drives in the 3rd quarter, so they let the 3rd string running back take some of the 4th quarter. He got the first drive in the 4th quarter. So here I am, and warming up again on the sidelines because it's the 4th quarter and I haven't really been in the game or done much. And so I get called in, and I think we go 2 and out on the first drive. So I get back out there, we get the ball back around 8 minutes left. And then I get the ball 6 times on that drive, run for 55 yards. And then I believe that was actually maybe even further in the game. We might have had one more drive where I had a couple of carries too. But on the last drive, I had 6 carries, 55 yards, and we're down to about the 5-yard line. We have the lead, and the quarterback fumbles the snap, and then we end up downing the ball. But I came out of that game as the leading rusher on the team.
Nice.
And everybody the next week told me that I'd be traveling and that I'd be playing in BC, and it didn't happen. And I went, what more could I have done with the time given to me? And I really went through a tough time the next couple of weeks because that opportunity didn't present itself. And so that season, I didn't really get my opportunity. And then that's when I decided I had one more year of eligibility in junior, played that. I know we're kind of going on a tangent from this volunteering, but I think it definitely plays into it. And so, I played my last year of junior, and I traveled, I played, and I was on a bunch of special teams. I got to start at running back a couple of games and had fun playing football again, which was just a nice culmination of all those years of hard work and going through injuries and not feeling like I got an opportunity, and made some great plays. I felt I could have done better that season, but it already seemed to be transitioning. I kind of took a little step back to enjoy it. And then that's when I decided I had one more year of schooling. If I worked really hard at it, I had my fieldwork portion, and I still had about 5 courses to take. And I was working full time through that as well. So it was a chaotic year, and I'd never want to repeat that, but I made it through. And it was just natural. So the fieldwork portion, I ended up working with my high school, and it just seemed natural to be, okay, I'm not playing football anymore. What's the next step? And they say those who can't play coach. So, but in a way, it's you have that expertise and you want to help people with that. And that was a rewarding experience because I got to spend a lot of time involved in the program that really helped shape me initially in those stages. And then to move forward, I still try and help as much as I can. It's kind of been learning my professional career and doing things. But even within that, I've volunteered, especially when I worked for the professional sports organization I did, working in a lot of those programs that were helping youth and helping through volunteering even. I would volunteer some of the time that I had, which wasn't much, but to some youth and high school programs, just because I knew that I could help them with the knowledge that I had and maybe break things down. And I'm still young enough to run around and show kids exactly what the drills look like. And so I respect the coaches that are still doing this at 40, 50, but you kind of have something to show and to give. And
Yeah.
I think humans are really creatures of mimicry. So it's when you can actually see somebody do it, you go, okay, oh, that's how that works, and kind of break it down. So I find that's really rewarding. But it was definitely that journey that I had. And you see the highs and the lows, but to see what I learned about myself through that, I want to give other people that experience at least,
for sure.
just to know what they're made of and what they're capable of. So that was what sport did for me, and that's why volunteering, even to this day, is so important in my life.
It's awesome. I think you speak to, I think, everyone in that regard. There comes to a point in your life, whether it's now or late, whether you're 40, where you start to give back, right? And help others with the experience you have. And I personally never thought of myself ever getting to that point. Growing up, on some level, I was very nihilistic and not very hopeful for society or for the human race. Now I would say I'm more optimistically nihilistic. And I see the value in others, and to think of where I was and where I am now as a personal trainer and helping others in the fitness world. I like it. I like being able to help people and to pass that knowledge on, especially through the mistakes I have made with like dislocated shoulder, torn ACL, and how to avoid having those kind of injuries and what to strengthen, and just teaching people. It's also an incredible feeling.
Yeah, just to share that knowledge, and that's how we build each other up, is sharing that knowledge and sharing our talents. And so when you can do that with people, it can make such a profound difference. I'm a strong believer also in just the little things making a big difference.
Yeah. One
of the things, it's an early memory. I remember being I would look up at everybody. So I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, but it was walking in, I think it was Perkins, because it was popular in the 90s. But
it's not anymore?
Yeah, it's still popular. So I was running to the door because I'm excited to go get pancakes or whatever and have my chocolate milkshake. I was addicted to chocolate milkshakes when I was young.
Nice.
And but I ran to the door, opened up, and just kind of ran through. And my mom stopped me and just said, well, there was an elderly couple walking towards the door, and she says, you hold doors for especially people older, respect your elders, and also just do the nice thing and do the friendly thing, and because the little things matter. And so that's something I've kind of kept with me, is just, I will almost do it. That you kind of see that there's the person that's a little bit too far away, but I'll go out of my way to hold the door for someone, because you don't know what somebody's going through. And that's why I try not to let the little things bother me either. When maybe somebody is a little bit stressed out, or you can tell they're being a little bit short, or maybe even irate, you don't know what somebody's experience is and what they're going through.
Of course.
So it's a really big thing. It's maybe that small act of kindness can make the world of difference, because maybe that's the thing that changes their mindset for the day. Maybe that's the thing that gives them a little bit of hope that in humanity, as you might say, and then hopefully make that change.
It's an interesting practice to start being conscious of your judgment, because we judge each other, and they say within 10 seconds of meeting someone, you've already decided whether you like them or not. So it's always, and I've definitely done it too. I'm no different than anyone else. I've gone into situations where I thought someone was very arrogant or egotistical in some way, and just the air about them turned me away from them. But then as I get to know them, maybe 2 months down the line, I'm like, oh, you're actually a really good person. I actually become very good friends with them, and they actually have a lot to offer. It's just that initial, and I always wonder too what people think of me upon initially compared to if someone got to know me for a longer period of time. It's interesting. So it's always good to go into a situation consciously thinking about okay, my judgment might be incorrect about this person, and there's probably more to this story, and not probably, there is more to the story. They're this way for a reason, right?
Yeah. It's
Oh, just on the side note, that we talked about the animals and helping animals and volunteering in animal shelters. So I'm all for that. In fact, we have a dog and a cat at home. They're both rescued.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
Yeah.
and
awesome.
now they look fantastic. But you should have seen them when they were rescued. And I'm a guy that always loved animals. I was not I've never been able to work or live with farm animals, but we had always animals at home. So much so that we looked like a zoo. We had turtles and chickens and ducks and I don't know cats, and that makes you feel like okay, these animals are very much like humans. They have emotions, and they understand what's going on.
Yeah.
More than you can ever imagine. So if to hurt an animal is a very inhumane way, and it's like they say if someone hurts an animal, they're 800 times more likely to hurt a human being. So if someone hurts an animal, they have to be on the watch list because they're gonna be chances are they're gonna hurt a human being some point in their lives. They're gonna become serial killers. They're gonna become you know whatever.
Right. It's no different
Yeah.
than abusing a child, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that said, and what you said about ALS, we also need animal experimentation.
That's true, right?
It's a very unfortunate thing that we have to do this.
Yeah.
But as someone who does this firsthand, I know that's it's emotionally tough, even on researcher and on the animals, of course. Uh, so to whoever animal rescue volunteers out there, please don't break into the science labs and try to rescue animals. If you want to do such thing, do it with cosmetic products
Yeah.
factory. That's something we don't need.
Yeah.
If I want to use 10 or 12 animal, I have to go in front of a committee and justify using those animals. Why do you need 2 more animals?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's, and we just works on we work on mice and rat. I know that there's some researchers work on cats and dogs, which I'm not gonna be able to do anything like that, even if my life depends on that, because they are like very, especially cats and dogs. They have been, it's like those domestic cats and dogs are descendants of big cats and wolves, and we are the ones that made them what they are now. So they are emotionally attached. They can read our faces. They can read our voice tone. So it's very. I'm guessing even if it's for the greater good, it should be. It's not what we are doing now. We can't do any animal experimentation right on cats and dogs, in my opinion. So even on mice and rat, you have to justify it. But those cosmetic companies or pharmaceutical companies, they do it on much bigger animals, and chimpanzees or mammoth monkeys or
Yeah.
capuchin monkeys, and you might be surprised that what makes the greatest changes in science are the science that's done in universities and not in pharmaceutical companies. What pharmaceutical companies do is just buy a research off a university, and they expand it and even they distort it and try to make money off it.
Really.
So yeah, so those if they do animal experimentation, if you want to stop someone, try to stop them. And I hope someday they'll get to the point that we don't need animal experimentation. We are very close. We have right now, we grow human tissues in the lab that very much like human organs, like the clone or the I know the brain cells, but we are far from having an intact human organ that we can actually. So it doesn't have any, not soul, but it's not a human. It doesn't have a consciousness. So you can actually experiment on those cells, and these are my cells. So I'm gonna give my, let's say I have cancer, I'm gonna give my cells, and it's brain cancer. I'm gonna give my cells, they're gonna grow brain tissue, and they're gonna find the treatment that works for me.
Right.
And then you don't need any animal experimentation anymore, because it can actually work on human tissue. But until we reach that point, we need that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, it's the unfortunate side of it, but yeah, and you're right. Yeah, it's the cosmetic side of it. They don't need it, right?
Yeah, you don't need it. You don't need to survive. You don't even need to look good. there are many ways to look good with natural products and everything. Well, 100 years ago, there were no cosmetic product the way we have now.
Yeah. I feel like there are probably some people that would disagree with that sentiment. I don't, but
Yeah,
um,
you know.
there are people that can't go without, say, cosmetics, right, in their day-to-day life. But it's not a necessity in life. Whereas when we test on things like animals for diseases, it's to better our lives or to extend them and abolish said disease, right? So it's like a necessary evil, right?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder how long it'll be before we start to go away from cosmetics, just in the way that we're evolving to being, especially in terms of social equality and things like you just see. And then even beyond that, when we're growing tissues, it's kind of something I wanted to talk about as well. Just the transhumanism. I'm kind of thinking of what's it called? What's the TV show on Netflix? Oh,
The carbon.
Carbon, yeah, Altered
Carbon.
Carbon.
Altered Carbon, yeah.
I really enjoyed that show, but it was I enjoyed how it was done, but it also made me a little fearful for the future because it pointed out, and I think very accurately, what a lot of the issues of the future will be. Maybe a small backstory of the show. They basically captured your DNA in stacks, which plugged in, for lack of a better term, but where you could put them into different sleeves, which were essentially human bodies. And so if your stack
Soulless
was
bodies,
still soulless bodies, but that could be grown from your own tissues. So basically, if you could grow organs, you could start to grow skin. You could make it look like you, especially with the cosmetic procedures that we can do now. You could probably make a human that looks, or make a human body that looks just like you. But then there's, we talk about the soul and all sorts of different things, but then the stack would plug into new bodies. And so basically this technology was mostly, you had the same hierarchies that you have now, but it's the rich are able to have, even back up their stack data and things. And so there were kind of these intricate ways around the system. So if your stack was destroyed, then you would be biologically dead. Like there was no bringing you back still. But there were a couple of different ways that these rich mega millionaire, like I don't even know.
Back up to the cloud, right?
Back up to the cloud, essentially, which is what it was. But it was, it just seemed that even some of the social issues, so there were, and their technologies were that much further. They had flying cars and everything was built up even higher.
Yeah.
And you had, trying to think of some of the other things, and then you had the traditionalists that say, let's not have eternal life. And then, so you kind of had the religious connotations. And so they were seeing some of them as terrorists. But it was just the complex social issues that caused. And that we're probably not going to, we're not far off from having to face some of these things. I look at stem cell research. It was interesting listening to, it was Joe Rogan had on Mel Gibson and a stem cell research doctor. And Mel Gibson's dad was in his 90s and got stem cells injected and was able to function better, which is a great thing. But again, it seems that, well, this technology is really only accessible. He had to go down to Panama or something and to get these treatments done because there are certain stem cell treatments in the US that are legal and able to be done.
Yeah.
But if you go to different countries, you can get even more work done, and you can get because there's prenatal stem cells and some of them from the
And it's
umbilical cord as well.
It's kind of dangerous injecting stem cell for a person in its 90s. It should be fine because, but it's for a younger person, it always brings the chance of cancer. So I forgot the specific term for that type of cancer. So you inject their own cells, but they are stem cells. They should have this ability to regenerate without any, because our cells regenerate for, let's say, for a limited time. After that, they're gonna start, the DNA start to decay, and let's say, I don't want to be very specific. So DNA starts to decay, and the cells start to die, and all sorts of mutations happen, and usually people. That's why when people reach after 90 or 100, usually many of them die cancer or all sort of these types, especially blood and gastrointestinal types. So, but if you inject a young person with stem cell, chances are they're gonna get cancer because of those stem cells, because they're gonna divide and occupy the whole body and kill the person. So unless it's the person is very old, or the person is gonna die in an hour, just in a hypothetical situation, if it was gonna die in an hour, and the stem cell gonna increase the chances of life for a few years, I don't think that's a good thing to do, at least right now.
To me, the one sentiment that I had from that interview was a little bit of the vampiric aspect of it too, where it seems that take from the young to let the old live longer, and it just worries me in a way. It seems we need to keep ourselves in check. It's strange that we have all these new advancements, and yet we don't know the repercussions of these advancements until they come along. And then even there's the introductory phase, and then you kind of have the stabilization, but it seems that we'll probably go too far before we rein it back. And that's just in a human sense, not even in technology. That's not in, but, and then we look at nature and the amount of species dying out and climate change, if you believe in it or not. But it seems inevitable now that we need to find solutions to a lot of our issues, and yet we're evolving in a lot of different ways at the same time, and it just seems chaotic, really. And who knows exactly what's going to win out as being the predominant victor of our resources and the technological and even biological advancements. So one of the things that I've grown to actually appreciate more is the human struggle, the human experience, but I would say the human struggle and the opportunity to achieve amazing things, and even the fact that death allows for new life. And so I think there's a beauty in being human, and I don't think I want to personally lose this experience.
Well, let me ask, if you had the opportunity to live forever,
No.
Would you? No, instant no. Okay, why?
And it maybe would depend on when you ask me, but
let me ask you this way.
Okay.
If you were, there's no after, I'm going to tell you, there's no afterlife. Will you live forever?
So here's the thing. I don't necessarily believe in an afterlife. And so this has to get spiritual now. You injected the spirituality aspect into it.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, I mean, do you necessarily believe in an afterlife? I mean,
yeah, because if for those who believe, it's very easy to die because they're gonna live again.
yeah, so so then essentially, if you believe in an afterlife, you're going to live forever anyways, right?
Yeah,
So,
sure, rebirth,
Or reincarnation.
Reincarnation.
Or it depends on your religious and spiritual views. I've kind of let it be known that I believe in a Taoist philosophy and outlook on life. And really, to me, you think of the yin and yang symbol, but I also kind of draw it on a lifespan. There's kind of a peak to life, and then you start to decay towards death. But then to me, there's the opposite. There's the other side of the line, which just is not a physical existence. And I've become a little bit more of a believer in the way that you live your life. And it's not a heaven or hell thing. I almost think that there will be an experience, and this is very hypothetical. You can believe in that there's a heaven and a hell. You can believe that there's nothingness. You can believe that's fine. This is just maybe a personal view. But the way you live your life and the experiences that you have, I feel like they'll just be an opposite experience. You'll kind of get to see on the other side how those experiences went outward and maybe the effects that you had. And so you'll kind of see the good that you put into the world or the evil that you put into the world and see how that stemmed outwards. Kind of, I have a tree analogy where it's just like almost the giving tree, where it's just, you put your energy out into the world and you nourish it. And then either you positively build things up and you think of maybe the others as small plants. And so if it's got the right nourishment, it's got water and it's got sunlight, it's going to grow and become a healthy tree. And I don't think humans are very different from that. So if you're bringing positive energy and positive outlook and trying to affect people in a great way, and I know we're not perfect. I think you're bound to make mistakes, and you have to learn from those mistakes. The worst thing that you can do is not learn from your mistakes and keep repeating the same mistakes. Don't they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results?
Yeah.
So all of this is to say, when you die, I believe that there's a kind of, people talk about the return to oneness and just nothingness, but I almost think that it's, you'll live those experiences not as yourself, but you'll just kind of see it and you'll feel it in a sense. And so you'll go through that experience until you're just become again one with the universe, one with the, I would almost talk about it like an energy. I think of different energies coming together. And I even think in a way that people talk about the Big Bang, but it's like somehow energies came together and kind of formed all this. And even looking at the universe, there's so much chaos, but then all of a sudden, sometimes the chaos creates beauty from it too. You have planets colliding, you have supernova stars, you have all sorts of different insane things happening in an infinite universe. And a lot of it's chaotic, but it's led to us being here. And I think we're a reflection of that. And so there's just a return to that oneness, that energy. And so that's kind of what I believe to be the other side in a sense. And I think that I want to do the most with my time here, but I don't want to lose that process. It's the ultimate unknown, right? So I don't see that. Why would you want to live forever?
I like that you brought up the whole oneness and a thing. I was going to bring up Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I think he put it in a very understanding way of where we come from and how our atoms come from the stars, and that one day those atoms are going to return to those stars. So, and I like that. That's nihilistic optimism at its finest, right there. That one day we're not going to be here anymore, right? And I find it comforting on my end, just knowing that and especially when in times I'm feeling really stressed and like feel like the weight of the world's on my shoulders, kind of just look up the sky and be like, we're so tiny, we're so insignificant, and we're that pale blue dot in the universe, and there's so much more out there that then this will pass. Like, it doesn't matter as much as I think it does. And so I find comfort in that, and actually it helps me bring my stress levels down. In a very weird way. Like I said, optimistically nihilistic.
It's interesting because I watched the Cosmos series with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I loved it, a lot of how it was done and all the information, but I actually felt that it made me feel so insignificant at times where I felt depressed. Like it kind of brought me down a little bit, but I also see the beauty, and I learned so much from it that I don't regret watching it or anything. Yeah. But
I think most people would be on your side, and the feeling of feeling insignificant makes me feel like I don't matter. I guess
we don't. That's the point.
Thing.
But you know that you don't, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
you comprehend that you don't matter. You comprehend that you have the ability to begin to understand how the universe works, and that's the beauty of it. Yeah. You don't. Your mind, if your body could function for unlimited time, your mind was good enough to understand many things and live forever and be beautiful. So that's the beauty of being a human.
Yeah. So for those people that were that idea of being so insignificant compared to everything else, the idea that you're going to be gone one day, stop putting your sense of grandness or grandeur into that feeling or into that notion. Rather, put your problems into it, because then you'll come out of it, I think, feeling better, because your problems really, at the end of the day, don't matter. And it's hard to wrap your head around, but it's to me, it's enlightening. Sorry, I kind of wanted to bring it back to as well. You were talking a bit about just the whole living forever, or would you?
Right.
And I think a lot of people would disagree, and a lot of people would love to live forever, because I think the argument for it would be like, well, then how much could I accomplish? How much could I learn? Right, all these experiences, but then you also lose the sense of urgency. I think the sense of of how mortal you are, right? There's always tomorrow, right? I can always do this tomorrow.
They say part of our motivation is the fact that you're going to die. It's kind of,
Yeah.
It's maybe not something that you want to fixate on, but it is in the back of your mind somewhere that there is a finite end to this and to accomplish.
And I would argue that we lose even sight of that, living to 70, 80, 100, 90, 100 years, that we do lose sight that death is an actual thing that will that's inevitably going to take you at some point or another.
I would say that's why the life cycle has changed so much in the past, even 40 years, because you have
30's
delayed,
the new 20, right?
You essentially have delayed adulthood. You have delayed, and for better or for worse, but it's just happened this way because now just providing food and shelter for yourself is much more difficult in terms of relative income that we've had in our generation. It's much more difficult on a single income to afford a house or to afford an apartment and all these things. So it kind of seems necessary that there is a delayed onset, but at the same time it's that drive and finding those things are delayed as well.
Yeah. So this falls into the whole optimistically nihilistic thing again. But to those people that say that there's always tomorrow, and I say this to my clients when I sign them up for personal training, and they're like, I'll think about it, or I'm going to start next week, I'm going to start tomorrow. Stop living in the future because there's no guarantee of tomorrow. The only thing you can guarantee is right now. You don't control the past. You don't control the future. You control right now and what happens right now. And if you want to make your life better tomorrow, it needs to start happening right now. It can't start happening tomorrow because you can't guarantee that to me. You can't guarantee it to yourself.
So I'm going to go back to the original question. So would you live forever? And what I would say about that is it's that human experience and being able to have children, watch them grow, watch them start new. You would lose that experience because if there's 10 billion people living forever, whatever that number is, there wouldn't be any not be any purpose to having children. It would just be a bunch of people living forever.
Yeah, so you run into a whole other slew of issues, right?
A bunch, and then you'd have people. The same things would happen, though. You'd have people vying for power and ultimate power, and how do I become more? And it would just get so chaotic that I don't think that it's sustainable. I think eventually somebody would press the button, and then that's probably it. But whereas in the current state, you kind of have to pass down. You have to pass down your experiences in different ways, and we have so many new ways of doing that. But it's great. That's why I've transitioned to wanting to learn about history, because there's this wide range of human experience that we even look down upon, where it's the Roman soldier and sword and spear warfare. Yeah. Whereas, and that was a reality for some people's lives, that they had to do those things to survive. And now we say, and there's still a lot of similarities if you're a soldier in current times, but it's just, I don't know what I'm getting at, but this human experience is just, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And yes, there are those horrific times and historical periods and even those horrific things happening today, but there's the chance for beauty, and there's the chance to watch things grow and flourish. And I don't want to lose that. Mm-hmm. And I think if you solve death, for lack of a better term, that you lose that experience, that you lose that beauty of what it is to be human. Yeah. And to grow with the family and to learn as much as you can and make as much of an effect while you're here, knowing that that's not guaranteed. Just like you say, there's maybe not a tomorrow. So let's start right now. Right. Let's start making a difference. And that's something I believe to my core.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So, but
I'm kind of. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm kind of on both sides, I guess. I'm kind of with Riley on your points, but I'm also one that I wouldn't mind to live forever. Yeah, to see how the world.
I've thought about
experience more of the world, and just to be able to just be here, see how the future goes, and being able to be part of it.
Yeah, it would. I mean, yeah, no, undoubtedly, it would be interesting. I always just ask myself, whenever that question comes up, though, I'm like, I always think I'm like, oh, I can learn all these different languages, I can do all these different things, but then like, would I though? Would I bother?
Yep. So the thing is, you're done.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So yeah, you're what you're saying is true, because we can't leave. But I believe you are true because we can't leave. I'm sure that we're not gonna be able to cheat this or defeat this or whatever in, I don't know, even
our-
forever.
Yeah,
At least we are with the bodies we have now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to say, okay, we want to see the beauties. We're gonna have a limited time. That's the beauty of it. And there was this movie, an old movie, that there was a robot that became everything in every sense became human. But when he asked, "Am I human now?" they said no, because you're not gonna die. You're not human. But all this, so we haven't lived. There's no one that have lived forever. So we can't ask someone, okay, like
that experience doesn't exist.
how was it? Did you
Do you
did
regret
you
it?
spend your time? Do you regret it? Do you feel like you want to kill yourself? Do you want to have the option to die?
It's true. I could be maybe the most productive, most knowledgeable
Yeah, so
person
you-
ever.
you-
You don't know.
The
Yeah.
the best I think the least thing you can get out of it is you get to live in different places for years, and I'm guessing the end point will be if you'll actually learn languages, right? At least, or
Yeah.
you learn cultures. You're gonna have you're gonna be a great sociologist.
Well, yeah, and imagine at that point you'd have a hand
Historian,
in
or-
developing whatever
Yeah.
current world you live in, right? There would be some hand in
Yeah.
that. So that would be a very interesting. Who knows? Maybe one day.
That's if it's
Once-
a
Well, it's not
singular
gonna
case,
happen.
too.
So
Well, and even if we find a way to cure death, we still have the chaos of the universe that eventually will wipe us out. There's no such thing as infinite energy. Our sun's eventually going to die. At the end of the day, we're going to be left in a cold universe, right?
yeah, but we're all
Yeah.
engulfed before
Sorry.
that. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to make that all grim.
But it's so.
But we'll
bringing
still
it
be
back
there
think
to
it's-
experience it, though.
yeah,
You know what? You might find it grim. I find it extremely exciting, and the universe is an amazing place, and just the chaos of it. The fact that we can be struck by an asteroid tomorrow and just be plummeted into
dust.
dust in a second,
So
amazes me.
here's what I would say is this is the culmination of spirituality and science, and trying to figure out what that means in our current societal and global climate is maybe one of the most important things. I think we've lost a sense. I mean, religion seems to be declining in traditional ways a lot.
So my mom actually goes to a group at one of the churches, and I didn't know this, but apparently they're struggling to stay open in Winnipeg. There are many churches that are on the verge of shutting down, and they don't know what's going to happen to those buildings. And there's all these old architectures, these old buildings. What happens to that when these churches are no longer?
Might get a little blowback, but I don't think Scientology is the answer either.
Yeah, well, they're worse.
But I do think that there's a place. I mean, we look at the advancements from science, and yet spirituality in kind of a new sense seems to be more important than ever before. It seems that a lot of people lack purpose, whereas if you have a deity or a figure to strive towards, that is the penultimate perfect human or perfect ideal to work towards, I think that's important to have that as motivation. I'm not saying we should have traditional religion necessarily, but figuring out, trying to figure out that ideal and trying to figure out what you should strive for in your own life is an important journey. And in my own life, it's been learning a lot of different morality, philosophy, religion, even seeing the negative sides of all those things and the positive, but kind of taking on those parts of it for yourself is really important. And even science, it kind of seems that there's negative science, positive science, like trying to do these things that are uplifting for humankind and help humankind. And then you have some focus on, I think especially psychology, it's focus on the negative sides and kind of the outliers and things. So
Neuromarketing.
so we have to build up again, and I think it's just finding what is important for us as humans to be striving towards is maybe what we should be doing. One of the things, I think this plays into it a little bit in terms of the human experience, but maybe the toughest physical challenge or mental obstacle you've overcome or are maybe currently learning to overcome.
Well, for me, well, this is very personal, so you might be one of the few that can know, except my wife and my therapist. I've struggled with major depression, anxiety. I'm struggling with them right now. So but as someone who knows that okay, there are these and these medications and the people take it and they're fine. So I never found them helpful. So unless you decide to help yourself before it gets too late, no one else gonna help you.
Yeah.
Even all the medications that we have, I think they're not gonna work. Yeah, they're helpful for some people, but I think the idea of giving one specific medication to a whole bunch of people of different age groups and races and I don't know upbringings and everything, and believing okay that this is gonna solve a problem that's a spectrum, not one specific problem, is absurd. It's something that's only a pharmaceutical companies want. I'm not gonna go ahead and be like those people. Look, pharmaceutical companies are evil. They're gonna kill us. Let's not vaccinate our children. No, I'm saying if don't medicate your children, don't medicate yourself unless it's absolutely necessary. Even if you have mental illness, talking or going to being with groups of people that are experiencing the same thing as you are, or going to a therapist, just talk. I mean, a psychologist, not a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So it's gonna help you much better. So if you decide to help yourself, imagine that okay, what I'm experiencing, and mostly in my mind, and believe that okay, there's a universe I'm insignificant. My problems are therefore insignificant compared to that big universe. Will help you much more than just taking a few bunch of blue and red pills.
Yeah, no, I agree with that sentiment as someone who has and is struggling with depression as well, especially like in light of certain events that have happened over the past couple of years in my life. I've never medicated myself. I'm not saying that it's not an answer either. Like there are people, my sister used to be on lithium. She was bipolar. I'm not saying I'm bipolar, but depression is something I always deal with. And it's always, I mean, especially living in Winnipeg too, seasonal affective disorder is something we all have to inevitably deal with. And I always try to just think about it and how do I isolate that time? I try to think of like, why do I feel good in the summer compared to the winter? How can I isolate that feeling and what can I do in the winter that's going to bring me closer and maybe not to the level as that I am, that I'm happy or less depressed in the summer, but it's going to bring me closer to that point. And usually it ends up being me being more productive in my life in some sense and moving myself forward rather than wallowing in what I'm sad about, right? But everyone's issues is going to be different in how they deal with it. How I deal with mine is always just I do something. So either I work or I move myself forward in some regard, and try to better myself or understand more about the world in some way or another, so that it's not. And it comes back to just looking up at the sky and just kind of realizing I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm nothing. And to me, like again, a lot of people would not find comfort in that, but I do. So like that, like my problems aren't so much bigger than everyone else's. If that makes sense.
For some reason that made me think of, I wish I was wearing it today, but I usually wear dog tags, and one of them says ex nihilo nihil fit, which means out of nothing, nothing comes. And to me, it's just a constant reminder to keep doing and to keep achieving, to keep striving. But really, it's one of my beliefs is that humans are creatures of habit and momentum.
Yeah.
So I think momentum's so important, but I believe you live long enough, you'll probably see all sorts of different areas on the spectrum of life, right? You're gonna go through those periods of high achievement, happiness, and fulfillment, or however you measure success or happiness in your life. But then you'll probably hit those times where things go wrong. You lose a job, you lose a loved one, you lose a relationship, maybe a business that's something in my own life, that a business I planned and wanted to get started didn't work. And you literally feel that sense of loss, and that brings you down because you're in that place where you just don't know the answer of what now, what next. And especially when it's the end of something, there's no bringing that back, which is a really hard thing to go through. And so that definitely has led to sadness or depressed times in my own life too.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a bonding experience. I think so. The thing that I keep thinking is that there's clinical, there is an area where likely there's pills are the answer. And so I don't want to tell people that.
No.
I feel like people know themselves the best, and you will know when that is the answer for you.
Yeah.
But I do find that there's a tendency to over-medicate. We are in an over-medicated society, and I would say at epidemic levels. You look at opioid crisis and you look at antidepressants, it seems that our answer is just to shove a bunch of pills in front of people's faces, get them to take it, and it numbs them from the outside world until hopefully they can be strong enough on their own to get through. But then you just have a dependency on that thing. So
yeah, it becomes this vicious cycle, right?
It becomes that vicious cycle. So yeah, and I know you kind of mentioned psychologists, and sometimes the worst issue with psychologists is that they've spent $100,000 going through schooling, and then they have drug companies that come to them and say, here is the answer to all evil and all negative feelings in life. And so when they're making money off of it, you often follow the money trail, and you can kind of see the influences that those drug companies have on psychologists, because
not
that's going to
all
make
of them, but yeah, there is, I'm sure, a large majority that fall under that influence.
Yeah, that's why I said psychologists. So you go and talk. Although I believe, you just to quote Sheldon on Big Bang Theory, psychology is a doofus of sciences. No offense to any psychologist either, but he sometimes it sounds like that because they believe everything is okay. Have you decided? They also have a one medication for everything. So have you decided to do this and that? So, but talking to them gives you the ability to eliminate choices and options that won't work for you. So what I'm saying is, don't believe what they say and just go and blindly follow them and do whatever they say. It's not gonna work. Talk to them, listen to them, because they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
They have spent, I know, hundreds of thousands of hours studying and hundreds of thousands of monies. So they know what's going on. So they can help you with that, but it's gonna be you finally who decides what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
And one of the biggest steps is always that admission that something's wrong is sometimes, and that you want to get the situation better, whatever it is, seems to be the most important step that you can take. I've even seen people close to me where it's that acknowledgement leads to some kind of development. Maybe it doesn't solve whatever issue it is, but you can start to build yourself back up, and you can kind of see, well, what's the ideal? What am I hoping to get past, or what am I hoping to achieve? A little bit of a funny side note. It's funny that Sheldon would say something like their psychologists, or what did you say? The
doofus of
science.
Something like.
Because you look at how much Sheldon struggles with other human beings, and so somebody who understands human beings and their
because in that episode they try a psychology game. They say if you go through these steps with another person, you're gonna fall in love. And they do that, and it doesn't happen. So okay, once again, it's a proof that psychology is a doofus of science.
Right.
And yeah, he is the
socially awkward
collection of socially awkward person, a geek and nerd, and someone he struggles with the I believe OCD, and anxiety.
Yeah, I had another point. I wish I remembered what it was, but maybe to transition a little bit to, what do people need to live a happy and fulfilled life? I thought of it
question
in
of the
terms of
ages.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs as being kind of a good starting point, maybe
Yeah.
to discuss.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, kind of what we talked about last time too, the whole balance of everything between relationship and the personal development. Like everything falls in line, right? There's a yin and yang. You've got to have both sides of it in order to have that fulfilled life. I believe that there's truth in that, and that you can't just live one side of it. You can have, there's like, for example, the business guy who works every day and just goes to work but has the failing relationship at home, right? That's not a fulfilling life. Maybe one part of it is the business is succeeding, but your relationship is failing. So yeah, I don't know. There's many different sides of it, but let's bring up Maslow's hierarchy here.
So, and it's the pyramid, but physiological is at the bottom. So it seems that you need the things that sustain life. So sleep, food, water, and then the next level is safety. So in terms of personal safety, health,
Yeah.
and essentially you think of war and things too.
Yeah.
You need to be safe with the people you're around. The next stage is love and belonging. So having relationships, both familial friendships and pair bonding or significant other is often part of that at a certain age as well. The next rung is esteem. I wish I remembered exactly. So being able to accomplish things, I would say, is part of that. But
That falls into having goals and being able to achieve them on some level. Not necessarily, we talked about this last time too, the materialistic, but beyond materials, right? Like personal goals of achievement and moving your life forward, not just getting that house or getting that car that you've always wanted.
yeah. And the final one being self-actualization. So reaching the pinnacle and realizing your best self, whatever that may be. So yeah, what are society's role in developing happy and fulfilled people? Or
So
what should it be?
I guess one is just to make an example, start with an example. Physiological need. It was totalitarian governments try to control people with, because as long as you are your mind is set on trying to win bread for your family, you're not going to be able to think about anything else. You're not going to quit. You're not going to need freedom. You're not going to need self-actualization, which is part of freedom. You're going to believe that you are an individual. You matter as an individual. You're not just some pawn and that's expendable. So that's one of the examples that pyramid works in.
It seems that ruling by fear
Yeah.
has a limit, has a very finite time, because eventually you're going to have, and then the issues within that is if it's a fearful ruler, then somebody just takes them out and takes their place.
Yeah.
That's kind of what
And then
has
you
happened
lose
through
like
history.
safety. You lose part of the
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy.
That's what
right
they do.
there,
They always say you have the enemy. Enemy is gonna come and take us. They're gonna come and, I don't know, kill your children. They're gonna come and take our country. But the fear, physiological needs, like the not having that safety of, I don't know, financial safety.
It's hard to
That's
think
how
of
they
it
do with
now
people.
in terms of we know so much peace, so we almost have an intrinsic sense of safety. We haven't. My life has never felt threatened. I would say 99.9% of the time that's true. There's obviously everybody lives an altercation or two where there's kind of, or just has been in situations where it's felt unsafe. But
yeah, so I think it's just kind of taken a different turn or a different face. Instead of being afraid or being safe from enemies, from death and that, it's more of, well, am I safe from bullying? Am I safe from in society? How are other people notice me? People want to feel safe in a different way, I think.
yeah, it seems that the social experience is expanding in so many different ways. It seems that when the issue is the enemy at our gates is coming to take our heads, it seems that it's uniting to fight off that force.
Yeah.
And I know that they talk about in terms of war that you don't have a lot of those issues in those times of war. You have massive cooperation, communication to defeat the common enemy. And actually, it was something I saw in Trump's, I know this is going to sound really funny, but in Trump's debates and election platform, that he kept making a common enemy. He went, China, Russia, they're all coming for us. Mexico's coming for our jobs. And then he said, I have the military ties, and I have these generals support me. So he made himself this like middle force of being with the military people and having them on his side, and also creating common enemies that were all coming to take, whether it was jobs or resources or anything, from the Americans. And I actually think in that sense he was really intelligent, because people actually, I think we still intrinsically fear those things where we don't want to lose what we have. And
Yes,
so anybody
that's ruling through fear in some sense, though. He's going back on those tactics, maybe not in the same brutal manner that it's been done in the past, but he is playing on people's fears.
I would say that every president has done that to a certain point. I always think of George Bush in the threat level, where it's never gone into the green. It's always been up above. It's at amber or orange or whatever, and then all of a sudden it turns to red. And because that actually drives consumerism, people buy more. You have to have your shelter packed with water and food and non-perishable food to last you months, because you don't know when a nuclear winter will come and all sorts of things. But it did seem I know that there's a direct correlation between the two, the threat level and consumerism. And I think that there's still a large part of that today is the fear of all these different things that could happen. That's why I almost think this North Korea thing is played up so that people are more fearful and buy more again.
Well, North Korea, Russia now with the long-range missile threat that was all over the news. It's since died down. Now they're back to talking about porn stars, but
yeah, it's a strange political landscape right now, because it seems that we do need more people that see all sides, that understand, because it seems that there's two sides. There's the conservative views, and then there's the liberal views, and then there's everything in between. But everybody has their party, and they have their belief system, and maybe the people in the middle just fall to one side or the other because somebody's in government long enough for the people to start to dislike whatever party is in power. So it's I don't know what the answer is, but it's definitely, obviously democracy's better than having a king in certain ways, but at the same time, it seems that this system has its own flaws.
Of course, and we are human after all. Every system is going to have its flaws. The big thing right now is consumerism, and it's crazy because fear plays up. People want to buy more, right? And then commercial companies will create that, like, you need this, right? That the idea of like this, you can't live without this. So we are more materialistic than ever. And Trump, being a businessman, at the end of the day, he knows that how to make money and what to say to make money.
But we look at the mass use of resources, and our planet needs new solutions, not more of the same. More drilling, and we know how that particular thing, but then everything culminating, whether it's our vehicles and pollution, whether it's farming even, and methane gases and all sorts of upkeep with that. So we look at all these issues culminating. We need to start finding green solutions. This might be the hippie mentality, but we do need to find sustainable ways of surviving as human beings. And
well, you put there was a study you put in the notes where the scientists said about animals and plants, and you're like, everywhere is not doing well.
This is maybe a perfect time to bring it in then. So, Asia could run out of fish within 30 years. UN biodiversity reports say, and it gets worse. Seth Borenstein, Associated Press. So I'll read a little bit of it. We'll see if there's maybe a good stopping point. But Earth is losing plants, animals, and clean water at a dramatic rate, according to 4 new United Nations scientific reports on biodiversity. Scientists meeting in Colombia issued 4 regional reports Friday on how well animal and plants are doing in the Americas, Europe, and Central Asia, Africa, and Asia Pacific. Their conclusion, nowhere is doing well. So a little bit more, the last white rhino died in Africa.
A male white rhino, right?
Ma-
So there's
male
two
white
females
rhino.
still, yeah.
Severe declines in number of elephants, tigers, and pangolins. I wish I knew what a pangolin was. Not a penguin, a pangolin. But those are only the most visible and characteristic of species that are in trouble. What's happening is a side effect of the world getting wealthier and more crowded with people. Humans need more food, more clean water, more energy, and more land. And the way society has tried to achieve this has cut down on biodiversity, he said. One of the really good books I read on this also was The Sixth Extinction. So there's been mass extinctions from all sorts of different reasons, but the major difference between those and this one is this is human caused. This is due to industry and very much the last 150 years. And I would say this is going to be the biggest fight of the 21st century, is actually finding a way we can live on this planet and survive in its current state.
Our population inevitably has to go down. I believe, what are we at? 1.6 Earths or something like right now? The measurement, they use a measurement to the population. In order to support the current population of Earth, we would need 1.6 Earths to support that population. I might be wrong on that number, but they said it's rapidly getting to 2. And inevitably, we're gonna hit a peak where it's gonna force it. Either has to come down or it's gonna be forced to come down because the Earth just can't support it.
So the thing is, humans has caused mass extinction throughout history. And the thing is, so humans evolved. So these are all theories, and they can change it. They can change. Like the not the way that it has become, not the way that it has turned out, the timing and the specifics can change, but the whole story will pretty much remain the same, like evolution. So they started in Africa and they spread out all to Asia and Europe, and the animals in Asia and Europe all knew humans, and so they kind of evolved together.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of, if you remember, we talked about the guns, germs, guns, and steel. So in that book, it argues, okay, humans went to all these new continents, and though animals there had never seen a human. So humans look very docile and very friendly, but to the point that they take out the gun or whatever. No, they didn't have gun. The sword or the arrow, or what's called the.
Well, there were spears.
Spears and
everything.
everything. And they killed animals.
Spears.
So they caused mass. So that by the time that the first humans, the sign of first human existence in North America, in Australia and New Zealand, at the same time you see mass extinctions of all big animals.
Well, buffalo in the prairies. Yeah.
They're all gone.
Yeah.
Well, the first extinction was the woolly mammoth. That was human caused. So there had been mass extinctions before. I mean, there are no dinosaurs around today.
Yeah.
There was a mass extinction of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
That one seems...
No, I mean, human caused.
Yeah, but
human caused. Woolly mammoths were the first. But then there really weren't a lot, because it's large animals obviously yield the most amount of meat, and so we needed food to survive.
And we also developed the sense of herding, having animals, so we could have them grow them.
Well, we were typically nomadic tribes until relatively recently in history. I can't remember how many thousands of years ago that the first agricultural-based farming societies were formed. But through evolution, actually an interesting aspect of evolution where there were cave-dwelling Neanderthals, and then there were Cro-Magnons who they expect were the ones who evolved towards being modern-day humans. Neanderthals were actually bigger physically and had bigger, I believe it was bigger brains, but the the part of reasoning in their brain was smaller, so they were less intelligent, or at least their capability for intelligence was lower. But they actually lived on the planet at the same time, so they don't know necessarily if there were any crossbreeding, because there were cave dwellers and then there were more nomadic tribes with the Cro-Magnons. But yeah, it's interesting to think of where we came from, and then so that's the out of Africa theory. I know that there are a couple others, but that seems to be the prevailing thought, is that ancient humans, for lack of a better term, or what evolves into modern day Homo sapiens, came out of Africa, started to walk on 2 feet, and then the evolution happened slowly. But then they went into Europe, over to Asia, and then there's a couple of theories of how they got to the Americas. There's some Native American myths, but Native American stories of how there was a crack in the ice from I believe it was a crow and made an ice path, very similar actually to Moses parting the Red Seas.
Oh, cool.
But pecking a hole in an ice shelf, and they were able to get to the Americas, which would make sense of kind of the evolution towards northern Canada, and then into South America even.
Well, that's becoming more of an acceptable theory that the first North Americans came from that land bridge, right?
Land bridge, and also so they would be most closely biologically similar to Asian populations as well.
Right.
So you think of the spread, and then you think of, well, then there were animals, and what's going to be most apt to hunt for human beings. And so the biggest animals that were the slowest in a lot of cases were obviously the best targets. So humankind's maybe best attribute as we became tribes and we were able to hunt together, and maybe ancient communication wasn't as sophisticated as we have now, but they were able to communicate enough to join their forces and able to hunt similar animals. And that's probably why you had tribes of 50, 100 people, and so they would take care of each other, make sure that they had food, and yet that's what starts to lead to these extinctions. And then when there's the human population becomes high enough, that's when it seems natural that because we're creative people, we started agriculture and decided, well, you can stay in the same place, herd these animals together and kind of grow them and do it that way. But when you're in the wild and so you have tribes, and all of a sudden there's tribes all around, you're fighting over the same resources. So that's why a lot of the human battles happen. But so between the woolly mammoth, but then not a lot, the rates of extinction now, I believe, are 2,000% more than they were back then. I might be inventing
2,000.
So
wow,
it might have been 2 or 3 species per year, and some of those might not even be human. It might just be the natural, because even before extinctions happen, but it would just be maybe a new population of animal kind of eventually wins out. Because you think of even this evolution through humans, it wasn't just all of a sudden humans appeared. It kind of certain, and there's no Neanderthals. So it was kind of the ones that were most apt to survive and to be able to be creative or band together, then survive longer periods of time. And so look at natural selection and all of Newton's research. But certain species are going to win out. So maybe on the point of extinctions, that we're at this place now where there's, I believe, thousands of species dying every year and going extinct. We lost, I believe, the white rhinos are gone. So how do we preserve what we have, and how do we slow these rates, and are there going to be animals left? Well, we have to, I know they're talking about cloning woolly mammoths back into existence. So will we get to a point in science and technology that we can start to bring some of these animals back if we have the mandatory DNA?
A real Jurassic Park?
That would be awesome.
Well, they did that in Futurama, and I actually think it's funny because I think that that's accurate. One of my pseudo life goals, and this might sound kind of hilarious, but I want to eat a woolly mammoth in my lifetime, because I think if we're cloning them back into existence,
let's bring them back so we can kill them again.
Wait, though. So we used to eat them, so they obviously must have been pretty tasty. But if
you
we're
never know, they were.
Listen, Sorry.
You never know. They were living like in Siberia, and then
Yeah,
trying to go. Well, there were nothing else to eat.
Yeah, it's not like I don't think it was a delicacy thing. It was probably a survival thing.
So if we're about 10 years away from cloning them back into existence, then we'll breed some. There'll be enough, and then what's the point? Maybe 30 years down the road, we start farming them and eating them because they're a large animal and they would yield a lot of meat for people to eat.
So instead of
People are talking about cows.
I was going to say
being
instead of
sustainable
cows.
because they produce less of methane and.
Yeah.
So the woolly mammoth isn't
So
sustainable.
imagine the woolly mammoth.
Can you imagine driving down the highway and you see farms of woolly mammoths
Yeah.
instead of cows?
How awesome would that be, though? I want to live in
Huge
that
creatures.
world. I want to live in that world. Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot of topics today. One of the other ones, I kind of wanted to bring this in because it just hit me the other day that talking about art is not something that people do very much anymore. And I was looking for an inspirational picture and actually found one. I hope everybody's seen it. But I found one that it was just, it caught my eye. And I think art has that capability of doing that, where it's just, you don't know why, but sometimes things speak to you. And so this specific picture, I don't want to give too much background because I almost just want to discuss what you see and then maybe what you take from it. So the quote I thought of as "a picture is worth 1,000 words." I would argue maybe even more, depending on the picture. So discussing the image below, it's called "Asking for Wisdom." And in 2012, inspirational art swept through the gallery as Ivan Guadarrama's paintings took on a new twist with brighter colors and stronger details. And so the abstract styles were mostly English and Spanish. And there also was a little bit of a focus on the brighter side of life, which I think is funny because in this particular picture, there's a lot that can be taken from its meaning. So, what would you? So maybe describe the picture, either Jayse or Colin.
Are we describing it objectively or subjectively?
Not objectively yet, because in a way, poetry you take the rhythms and the cadences and you just read the words and then you start to find meaning from it. So start with the beginning. What do you see?
To me, I see a guy essentially with his knees up and his hands with his head in his hands, like kind of like in a down position, kind of like he's very down on himself, down on life. That's kind of what I see from the picture.
So let's maybe just point out exactly what you see. So a man, and we know because of anatomically, he does not have breasts.
Yeah, not a child, clearly.
Not a child, fully grown man and you can see a fairly muscular abdomen, large legs. You see hair, but you don't see eyes. And you see an ear, so it's a side profile view, fairly muscular man, and arms down, draped over his knees, and head down as
he's
well.
Definitely, I would say he's in the fetal position. So arms wrapped around the knees, head turned down towards the torso, and knees buckled in.
It's funny because you could see different things. I don't necessarily.
I
I
feel
see
like,
sitting up.
Yeah.
So to me, sitting up doesn't denote the fetal position, but that only depends if the image behind is a wall. He could be.
Does the fetal
potentially on the
position need to be
floor.
on the side, though? That's the thing. I feel like a fetal position is the same regardless of whether they're up or laying flat.
So to me, it looks like when the first time I saw the picture, scene that you see in slavery ship, because skin tone, being a musculature, the masculine fit body, and not being happy, kind of being like you feel like you're trapped. You don't feel you don't see a way out.
I get that sense of trapped as well, where
Because it looks very. The picture looks very.
He looks like he's
Also,
hiding.
The colors are not.
I was going to say,
happy
yeah.
colors.
It's
looks
not
kinda
very
like he's
saturated.
hot,
It's
yeah.
very brown and gray.
Yeah.
And it's very uniform with whatever the background is. It's also the same color as whoever that is.
I would also say he looks almost raceless. There's no you don't really know what the color of his skin is. Not to say that that would change
Yeah.
anything in the picture, but it's mostly shading, and it's mostly dark colors
Yeah.
mixed with some
Very
whites and
earth
maybe
tones.
earthy tones,
Yeah.
which seems, when you use earthy tones, it's a very physical oriented piece, is maybe what I would point out. But I got a very similar sentiment from it too, that in a way he seems trapped. And whether that's being a slaver, I kind of thought a
So-
prisoner.
What's the title of the picture? Do you know?
The title is Asking for Wisdom, which
Interesting.
I found kind of interesting too, because I didn't take this as asking for wisdom.
Who's the artist?
Ivan Guadarrama. So not, I honestly just stumbled upon this painting, and it just spoke to me. So it was one of those things that then I went on the website and checked out some of his other works, and a lot of his other works did have a spiritual element or component to them. I thought this one might have been maybe the most honest and grim. A lot of the other ones had crosses or things, so taking on that spiritual connotation, likely Christian or Catholic in terms of spiritual viewpoints. But I something about this picture just spoke to me, because it's that area that I think is bonding, and that we've all talked about a little bit today, where it's feeling trapped either within your own life or within circumstance, or even physically trapped if it's being a slave on a ship or being a prisoner in a jail cell, was kind of what I got from it too. But
It's-
go ahead.
It's funny because it says asking for wisdom, and it's looking kind of down on its own. It's looking for wisdom,
from within.
and it's from within, not from somewhere else.
That's what I got from it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing for someone who draws crosses that have religious beliefs.
This whole discussion actually reminds me of a book I finished reading, and it took me a while to get through it. You've seen me with it a couple times. Visual Intelligence. So Riley, especially if this picture spoke to you, give that book a read, because it's all about, and it's not specifically about artwork, but it uses artwork as an example of how we perceive and view the world, essentially. And it'll give you pictures as examples, and the book will ask you, like, what do you see? And then the next chapter will be about that picture and what you saw, and then it'll be related to stories and how we perceive different events. And it goes into things like some bombings in Asia that happened, and how people survived versus how people got killed based on perceptions, because there was a hostage incident at a mall years ago, and I can't remember the details, but the people that took people, the terrorists, I guess, started dressing as police officers to get people out of hiding, and said they'd come with them, and then they would shoot them on sight. And people that were more perceptive of their surroundings hid in certain areas so they were never found, or were able to leave using different methods, and not trusting, and always asking, like, if an authority came to them, they would ask them for their badge or something, like, oh, are you actually an authority? So it's about not always believing exactly what you see too, and trusting things like instincts, but then always questioning yourself as well. So a very interesting book. I believe the author, Amy, I want to say Herman, I may be wrong on the name, but it's called Visual Intelligence. It's a very interesting read, and it's just all about perception and how we view the world, and looking at it from a different light.
And it's looking at what's underneath the surface as well.
Yeah, and it teaches you to look at things like, how would you look at a painting? And that's why I asked, am I looking at this subjectively or objectively? Because, like, I can bring emotion into it, but then that's subjective, right? You don't know what the artist means by it. I mean, the title gives some meaning to it, but looking at it, I see a person who's being held in a certain position. I objectively can't assume any emotion to the picture, right?
Yeah. It's really tough to take that subjective side out, where you're trying to put meaning on things.
We are conditioned to judge and view things that way, and it goes back into what we were talking at the beginning about judgment on other people. You're taking something subjective and applying it to someone else.
Yeah, that was the thought that came into my mind too. Is I find it more just inspiring, but also interesting to be looking at people. And I actually it's you can sense sometimes things happening underneath the surface, and I feel actually more in tune to that. I almost see the artwork of life more so than ever before, where you see people's struggles and you see people, even what they project into the world. And I feel that I'm at a point where I can read a lot of those just signals and maybe even small things that people project into the world.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that comes back to being a little bit judgmental as well. And I'll say that I'm guilty of that in certain senses.
I mean,
but
we all are.
especially in that sense of wanting to help, it's just you see people that are lost in different ways, and you really want to help, but you don't have that relationship with them. And there's really only so many interactions you can have. There's only so many. And I've even had this happen before where if you're constantly pursuing helping people and your cup gets emptied, for as a term that I would use, is you have to make sure that your cup's full so that you can bring it to everyone else. I'll even say I had the most positive bus driver, but I knew it wasn't sustainable. He was super friendly to everybody in the morning, and I believe he's a beautiful soul in person, and I've even had great interactions with him before. But he was so positive to everybody and so friendly and accommodating, but then those negative things happen. And I see it now. He kind of seems at one of those downtimes and he doesn't say hi to everybody. But I noticed those things happening, and I saw when he was being super friendly to everybody that it was unsustainable. And it's really sad to a point to just know that you can only do so much, and you only have so much energy, and you only have so much positivity. But it's trying to make the best of that however you can.
Of course.
And being open to that. You don't necessarily know when those opportunities will arise for you to make a difference, but being prepared for those times is maybe one of the most important things that you can do. So let's go into the subjective analysis of this portrait. So
we'll start us off on it.
Well, it is, there's something still hopeful about it, is what I like about what kind of drew me in, because it to me, being in that pit means that there's a way out. You have to find the weak point, and you have to, I would, in a weird yogic sense, you breathe into the weak spot, or you acknowledge even pains that you have. And so in the same way in this photo, it seems that it's just looking for a way out, and there always is a way out, but you maybe just have to raise your eyes.
Yeah.
You maybe have to look for it. Whether you're in a prison of your own making or whether you're in a physical prison. And I'm not saying we should have people breaking out of prisons everywhere, but
I think that the prison, that's a good descriptive word for this picture. So one of the first things I noticed about it was the framing of it. So they're not fully in frame. They're very much in a very crowded, it feels very crowded, right? The frame is almost pushing in on them, so the outside world's pushing in. So I get the idea of an outside pressure, and I guess the emotion that comes to my mind looking at this is sadness or depression, with the very turned in and very unsaturated look to it. So I would say it's someone who's definitely feeling pressure from the outside and turning in on themselves due to that pressure. That's how I see it from a subjective standpoint.
other subjective thoughts?
No, that's pretty much. I think Jayse pretty much nailed it. That's how I, someone who's very, feels like he's trapped, feels like he's.
What do you make of it? They seem to be naked in the picture. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's what I thought about being a slave ship, because they used to have to keep them naked, so it makes running. It's also humiliating, so it breaks them down.
Humiliating,
and it's
without anything.
Yeah,
so
vulnerable. And
Doesn't that also play into the fetal position,
very,
or assume
being vulnerable,
where you're brought into this world naked and alone? He is alone in this picture as well.
Yeah.
And so opening yourself up to the world and to experience and to life itself as being that freeing thing. And it's funny because this picture could be anyone, but it feels like you. And I don't know if...
And perhaps that was the artist's intention.
Yeah. because
why
The
maybe
fact that we can't see their face, that they don't have a race, as you said before, or it seems like they're not portraying any particular race in general. Could play to that.
all that's to say, a beautiful piece of art, and definitely art can inspire us in all different venues and different areas, whether it's music, whether it is physical artwork. I actually feel that I don't appreciate physical artwork, so it was funny that when the thought came into my head to just go, what artwork, and then I really looked at popular artworks or things that we've seen, and none of them spoke to me as much as this picture that all of a sudden came up. So
Art is pretty. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I have after especially reading that visual intelligence book, have a much more appreciation of art in general. And the book breaks it down essentially into different aspects, but the easiest and simplest way to remember it is when you look at a picture, break it down subjectively and then objectively. What do you see, and then what is actually there, and that you can't say that's subjective. You can't bring things like emotions into it, and then answer the questions of the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. Right. So we've answered many of those questions, maybe not the where or when, and then you can look into that, like when was this picture made, right? And then that could, maybe it was made during the times of slavery, so maybe it speaks to that a little
maybe
more, right?
they depicted something
Of course, yeah.
from past or future even.
But they're all things that play into that, into what goes into that painting, right?
definitely. Does anyone have any other topics or things that they'd like to explore?
I was going to talk about the security, I don't know, security breach, you can call it,
Facebook? Yeah, I was going to bring that up at the beginning. I'm kind of glad that you brought it up now. So
I kind of forgot.
Facebook seems to be on the downward slope as of right
they
now.
lost $58 billion worth of
Elon Musk has pulled out all his pages off Facebook now in light of what happened. So I don't know if you know like the details of what happened. If you want to fill everyone in.
Well, there is this, my memory fade. Maybe you can bring up the news. I mean, there's this.
What's Cambridge Analytica is the company.
So I forgot the name of it.
Yeah.
They were using for marketing and stuff.
But political.
Yeah,
like
but then they
the
kind of
2016
misused
election.
all the information to influence the election.
Yeah, so
50 million people have their security information.
Many companies, including Israel, Australia, are all doing an investigation into Facebook because it's looking like Facebook breached the privacy of its users in many countries, and that information was used to help sway. Of course, all of this is not proven yet, but there's investigations happening that all this information was used to sway the votes towards Donald Trump in the 2016 election. And so Facebook is in a huge plummet right now. I imagine Zuckerberg is not feeling too hot right now.
Well, the thing is, this kind of has the worst, another bad face, because in many countries like China or many countries like say in Iran, they filter Facebook and they say okay, they're gonna steal their information and use your information for their own good. So that's why for your own good we're filtering these websites. This kind of proves them right. Whereas the Facebook was supposed to be a platform for people who don't have a voice to make their voice heard, right?
Right.
But this way, it kind of helps the narrative of the totalitarian governments.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of scary, and it may be the end of Facebook as we know it.
Well, 58 billion in a few days, that's
a huge hit. I mean, the amount of active users they have on it and how much it's dropped off just now, just because of that, that's how companies come to an end. That could destroy them. I don't think it will. I think Facebook is big enough and they have their investment in their hands in other industries that they will survive. But that social media platform, it's definitely not going to be the same as it's been in the past.
Shows you how fast companies, big, huge companies can fall overnight. We even had, wasn't it Snapchat even a couple weeks ago? It was Kylie Jenner said, who uses Snapchat? And all of a sudden they were down, I think tens of millions of dollars at least in their stock because people went, oh, the Kardashians aren't supporting this anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, neither are we. And it shows you these knee-jerk reactions to these. And it seems that in terms of privacy and even our information being online, it's so many different places to begin with. If any of those places are hacked, I know it wasn't PlayStation or what was it?
PlayStation's been hacked before.
They've
all been hacked at some point.
Everything's been hacked.
Oh, being hacked is something else, but they're cooperating with this company.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this was like
a bad thing.
freely gave.
this is not hackers going in and forcefully taking the information. This is them willingly giving up information, private information on users in order to sway an election. So in order to sway who the leader of a country is.
That's a country like U.S., most powerful country in the world, most powerful military, all influences on all countries around the world. It's a huge thing.
Well, but they even showed that, or there's a lot of evidence to say that the liberal nominee, being Hillary Clinton, was also rigged. That she got that because that the Clintons have their hands in the right pockets. And
Exactly. I believe that one reason that Trump was elected was that Hillary was the candidate for the Democratic.
I don't think Bernie Sanders would have won against him either. But
he came in
but
too
he was
late
a
in the
better
game,
person.
right?
He was not as.
He came in too late in the game. I think he would have stood a chance if he tried the way he did mid-campaign, at the beginning of the campaign, and made himself known, because people didn't know who Bernie Sanders. A lot of people didn't know, especially in our generation, who Bernie Sanders was until Hillary became the big picture.
And it's funny because Bernie Sanders became the voice of the young people throughout his platform as well.
Yeah,
and he was
smart about it.
He's Jewish, and he was the only one that was invited to Vatican.
Yeah,
So that tells you a lot. And another thing is Hillary had run against Obama in the second run.
That's right.
That was another bad move.
well, she dropped out, right?
Yeah. So and then Obama was saying that time Obama was accusing him of many different things, but then he coming, she's the better person to be a president than me and the Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
No one would believe that.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world.
It is
The
a
political
crazy-
landscape is changing now, and you know what? Maybe it's a good thing to introduce. And it's happening in a bad way, and it's very chaotic in the political world. But it may introduce good change in the future. So
We can
Who
only
knows?
hope that the system starts to clean up in a sense, because it does seem that your power, your accessibility to powerful people, and
So there's been this corruption going on for a long time. It's just that now that Trump has come to office, a lot of things have come to light about how corrupted political parties can be, and certain massive figureheads, and what they're willing to do in order to win and make more money, right?
here's the random fact of the day. Since you mentioned the Vatican, there was a pope he was pope in 1492 when Columbus sailed over and discovered the Americas. And you could also argue that after the Vikings had already discovered the Americas, and after the First Nations or Aboriginals had already landed here. So there were peoples that knew the Americas before Christopher Columbus. But anyways, back to so Pope Alexander Borgia was a corrupt pope. So in the holiest of sanctities was corrupt, and essentially bought so you become a cardinal, but ended up buying enough votes and getting into was the Pope, and had a mistress while he was Pope, and even has been accused of having orgies in the Vatican as well. So when we
Makes
look
sense.
at leaders and powerful people, it's interesting. You think of absolute power corrupts absolutely, and so even rising to get to those points, who were the people that were cardinals? Well, it's rich, powerful people.
Yep.
And you look at Rome, who were the people in the Senate? Well, they were rich, powerful people. So it just seems natural that they then try and pass it along to their family or their lineage, because who can they trust when they're in power, and who's not necessarily trying to take their heads? There are a lot of examples where a brother will take out another brother. You even look at North Korea now, Whereas, that will happen. It's to kind of solidify their reign as absolute ruler. But in terms of American politics, it's how do I rise up and how do I get there? And it seems that there's all these backhanded deals. And how do we clean this up seems to be it's an intricate question. I don't know. I couldn't even hypothesize on what the answer is because, but when there's billions of people in the world, we think of Canada has 32 million last time I checked. I don't know if it's
somewhere around there, yeah.
But 32 million is a lot of individual people to have a leadership over. And, we do okay. I don't know if we're...
Still nothing compared to the 300 million in the United States.
And then billion in China.
In India, yeah.
And India. So, yeah, what the answers are, I don't know.
No. We should start wrapping this up.
Definitely.
We are past the 2-hour mark as of now.
Hey, perfect. Does anyone have a positive note we can lead people on? I'll have some closing thoughts following that, but something uplifting to leave the listeners with.
Sure. One day we're all going to be gone, so live your life today.
That's
both sides of it.
That's Jayse's grim outlook on the future.
Not grim. It's not grim, I swear. Gotta look at it differently.
How about live life to the fullest while you're here?
There you go. Act now.
Act now. I like that. Okay, some closing thoughts. As always, check out the meetup.com website if you're interested in the discussion group. We also have the social media pages up and running and hopefully some content coming your way. So Facebook and Instagram we have
For now.
Although, yeah, I don't know how long that's going to
Yes.
launch, the Facebook. But yeah, facebook.com/BeTheChangeYPS.
As we mentioned earlier in the podcast, volunteering, so the Andrew Dunn Walk. If you're interested, definitely send an email or even just message either of the social media pages and we'll get back to you as timely as possible. And one of the big things I'd like to announce is we will be having guests in the near future. So 2 weeks from now, we will, in all likelihood and all hopefulness, have our first guests on the podcast. So we're really excited to share new people's opinions and their experiences as young professionals and people who want to make positive change in the world as well. Any other thoughts? All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Until next time.